because now we're talking about something related to class, I will record it. So, what is the reason you would choose Microsoft Dynamics over SAP? And you have reasons that you can vocally express and say, hey, this is why. There are people that make an assumption just because a car costs more than another car, that car must be better. You know, a BMW costs more than a Chevy Impala.
Same with clothing. I feel like that's the biggest example would be with clothing.
Same with clothing, right? You don't see it as much in your generation as you saw in my generation, you know. Name brands have a lot more to do with fashion than they do these days, it seems. But I have some things that I want to buy strictly because they fit better. And it's like, I can buy an $85 pair of jeans, right? And I might buy them just because of a name brand, or I might buy them because they just fit better. Now, my only reason is because of the name brand or the price. I have a friend that would buy stuff just based on price alone. Well, if it's $85, that's premium. No, it's not. It's a pair of pants. Give me the actual benefit. You know, features versus benefits, right? Features, what can this do? Benefits, what are the things that it can do that I actually use? That'll actually serve a purpose. So, there are a lot of organizations out there that think something like, well, SAP is the biggest name in the game, or one of the biggest names in the game, therefore it must be awesome. I want to get into that.
Go with how many failure stories
you can't
companies
really
would decide, like, oh, maybe it's real hard to use, why wouldn't we pick something easier that would still serve the same purpose?
Yeah, so you do research, right?
Yeah.
And you determine it that way. My brother.
Answer it. You got all the time in the world now.
I don't have the time in the world, though. That's the
Put it on
problem.
speaker. Let's all talk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about my mom. She's doing poorly, and I think it's time to put her in a home.
And that's why you need to answer.
But she's not doing poorly enough to want to go to a home. Yeah, not fun. So that's going to be a whole new can of worms. But anyway, yeah, go back to what we were talking about. The concept of, you know, why we choose something, you know, being able to vocalize why we choose something, why we feel this way. Especially when you're going to your IT director or someone like that, or a CEO, and saying, hey, I want to spend $2 million on this piece of software. What do you think they're going to ask you? They're not going to say, okay.
What are the benefits of it?
You're going to say, what's the benefits? And you're going to be like, hey, they're the biggest name in the game.
They're also the one that people fail with the most.
Well, I'm not going to say that because I have a vested interest in doing SAP, because maybe that's what the only thing I'm familiar with. Maybe I'm coming from an organization that used SAP. Okay, so it's the biggest name in the game, but I also have experience with it. Okay.
That's a lot better.
That's better,
Yeah.
but that's not the answer.
It's not the answer.
Right?
No.
The actual answer is, okay, it's a big name in the game. You have experience with it. How does it relate to my company? You know, I'm a service industry. I'm not a manufacturer. You know, how much of this am I paying for that I'm never going to use? So there's a lot to be said about, you know, why we choose something, how we choose something, being able to explain it, and at the end of the day, be proud of the decision you made as long as it's benefiting your organization. If you fail because it was a bad decision, it needs to be based on data. You know, that way you can fall back and say, okay, well, why did we fail? Did we fail because it's bad software? No, we failed because we had poor communication. We didn't do our project management well. We didn't utilize our resources properly. We didn't. What's that?
Didn't test well enough.
Didn't test well enough, right? We just release it before, you know, we cut over and release it without testing it at all. You know, it's just this random, we're going to cut off and move. It's like, it doesn't work that way. Why do people do that? Even though it results in negative consequences 90% of the time, just a quick cut over to something new, it does not.
Well, it's all about the quick payoff.
Yeah, it does not mean that's the right way to do it. The reason people do it is because it costs money to do it the other way, to run them side by side for a while, and it takes more time and it costs money. So how do we determine all of that, right? It's not cut or dry which one there is, and it's like I said in one of our classes, is like SAP is not the end-all be-all just because it's a big name. You have to choose things that actually make sense for your organization. You know, look around, do some research. ERP is not an end-all be-all to organizations. You know, I think that's important to understand. Right? Some companies, some businesses, all they need is a POS system, because POS systems have a lot of the same things built into them. You can get a POS system that has CRM built in. So if all you are is a restaurant, you know, can I keep track of certain information based off the last 4 of your credit card number if I wanted to, right? How many of you have, I don't know if I have a receipt with me.
I don't keep receipts.
I didn't ask you.
Well, I told you.
Oh, okay. I didn't ask you.
Keep a lot of them.
Here's the thing. I went to Cafe Zinc, spent way too much on a lunch.
Yep.
How much? So
$85.
Oh, it's so worth it, I bet.
For how many people?
2.
So it's lunch.
It included 2 drinks.
Oh, there you go.
Alcoholic.
There's,
Nice.
but I love my wife.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so
Oh,
at the end of the day, when I look at the receipt, well, I've been called an alcoholic that hates my wife before.
I don't
Long
believe that.
conversation. But on my receipt, I never told them my name, but there's my full name right there, David Sanford.
On your card.
It's on my card. So I swipe the card, I've got information. Now the only problem there is in a relational database, if they're keeping track of it based on my credit card number, then what happens when I use a new card?
You're toast.
It'd be another David Sanford, because my name's on that card too, but is it the same David Sanford?
And this
Because
is probably not.
in Saginaw, there are 3 or 4 David Sanfords.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
popular name. It's a good name,
Yeah, David is a popular.
Real good name.
you know. So at the end of the day, yeah, it makes a big difference, right? Because now all of a sudden, their system, they're not using an ERP system necessarily, they're using a POS system. But they have a way of tracking data with it, right? So could they technically, I forgot I got $5 at the farmer's market in Mount Pleasant. Anyway. Oh, bunny. Oh, bunny. No, man, they got baked goods. Do I look like I eat corn?
I like everybody eating corn.
Not me.
My brother
even
eats
is
corn.
that.
I used to eat corn when I could do corn on the cob. I can't do corn on the cob anymore.
Does it hurt your teeth?
No, I have fake teeth.
Cut it off the corn.
Jet ski accident. That's not the same. That's just not the
How many
same.
fake teeth do you have there then?
3.
Yeah, grill, charger.
Good time.
What'd you do? Did you hit your face on the,
No.
or you crash it?
No, I crashed. I went, you know the videos where you see people tumbling across the water? That was me. Broke a rib, tore my rotator cuff.
Dang,
Yeah.
you did some damage.
And what's funny is the jet ski was fine.
You weren't though.
So I swam over to the jet ski as well as I could swim. Couldn't move this arm very well, but I got my arm up high enough to grab the handle, pulled myself back up, rode to shore. Had lunch with my friends, sat around for a little bit, had my sister-in-law take me to the hospital after we were done. That's how you do it right.
Even with your teeth and everything?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Weren't you bleeding? Ate lunch?
No, I wasn't bleeding. I didn't have any injuries, it just broke the teeth. Just the way it goes.
So now you got 3 less teeth to brush.
You still have to brush them, man.
You just get more.
I'm like, those are getting darker and darker and
Are they like
darker.
ivory or something? That'd be kinda cool.
No, they're porcelain like a toilet. That's not too cool.
That's not.
So anyway,
Gold.
Gold.
get some gold fronts. Yeah. Give me gold fronts. Keep the class with this big old golden smile.
Be a comic villain or something.
You guys are just mean, man, making fun of my problems. What's wrong with y'all? You want to feel better about your life? Ask me about mine. But anyway, yeah, it's at the end of the day, you have to be able to explain all this stuff. You can't just willy-nilly decide that you're going to spend a lot of money. These companies have access to all kinds of stuff. So why am I going to do that? You know, it goes as simple as my wife's library that she works at. Everything's database related, right? So I can tell that you have late fees and everything else. Well, can I have it automatically text you if you have a late book?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And if I do that, maybe I do it, maybe instead of telling you that it's late, maybe I remind you that it's due.
Maybe you remind them they might have a fine.
What's that?
You remind them they might have a fine if they don't turn it in.
That's just mean, man. Well, you gotta make it punitive. They know. They know they'll have a fine.
Make it
But you
like
just say, hey, you know, just letting you know. Because how many of us, when you check out a book, how long do you get it for?
3 weeks.
Yeah. Is it easy to forget that you had it for 3 weeks if you read it in a week?
Yes.
So maybe getting a reminder text saying, hey, you know, you have this due. And here's the interesting thing, because of a system, right, because of a system, it doesn't require any employee effort to do that, right? I'm not saying, hey, you know, and their system I don't think is capable, but the thing is could you make it capable?
Oh,
Could
easily.
you know, and the thing is I should be able to automate that task. It should automatically be able to send an email or a text message. Are you going to alienate some patrons? There are patrons that do not want to be texted by a business.
Yeah, they wouldn't even give you their phone number probably.
Right.
Yeah, but normally you get an email, right?
Yeah, normally you should get an email, right?
Yeah.
And is it an email address that they actually use? Because a lot of times, you know, I have an email address I never use to give people that I don't want contact from.
Right. Always good to have.
The
a
system in
brand.
the library here in Northwood, you can, some people that don't want to give us anything, you make it where it just says phone call only, not text. We have to personally call them actually if they have cookies and everything.
Jeez, oh shoot, that's on me.
Got an email.
I had my sound up from when I was playing the video of your best.
So now you're trying to play a different video?
No, I'll be 100% honest, I was on my email. It was my Northwood email though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was it class related?
It actually was kind of class related.
Kind of? What's
Yeah,
kind of? What's kind of?
So, I,
Can you draw this into class?
Yeah, I'm pulling Professor Sanford right here. So, I'm a student presenter for the Distinguished Women's Gala, and I was talking today, I had a meeting this morning with Holly Miller, the CEO of Midland United Way.
Okay.
And during our chat, we actually talked about the logistical challenges of like making sure they had enough food, water, emergency supplies, shampoo, toothpaste, like everyday items for the people of Midland right after the flood.
Mhm.
So we actually started talking about how like they kind of had to implement something like of the system in order to reorder inventory and make sure they didn't run out of like everyday supplies that people would need. So I don't know when I started telling her about, you know, my ERP class.
Is that in case there's another flood?
Yeah, so she said there were
Oh.
some things that like weren't.
I would personally wait for data before I ordered anything, like in bulk, because some of that stuff is perishable.
Yeah.
I don't have a marker with
Well,
me.
yeah, she was saying that they learned a
But-
lot from like this flood, so that they were like implementing stuff so that next time if something were to happen like that, they would be
Well-
more prepared.
But what they didn't learn is the results of not having dams, not having flood because no dams.
That's a fair point.
If you pay attention to all the rain that we've been getting, it's made the river only fluctuate by inches, not feet, where this amount of rain used to affect it by feet every single time. Because the people that lived on the lakes were more worried about their property value and their houses getting flooded, so you release all the water at once, and it all comes down at once and causes flooding. But now there's a huge floodplain that gets to fill in before all that water comes down here, a whole watershed. Don't fix the dams. Don't fix the dams. They don't. It didn't help people downriver. Just because we say that it's controlling flooding, it doesn't control flooding for everyone. It controls flooding for very specific people. So, but the thing is my point being that without that piece of data, without actually seeing over a couple years how that affects things, you don't know how much you should have. You don't know how prepared you have to be. And yeah, let's do, that was a 500-year flood, and it had to do with the rain that specific time in specific area. Can we get a computer model that shows how that much rain would affect us now? Because if we only get that much rain every 500 years on average, how does that affect us now that the dams aren't there? So I think that's important. And so you make some great points. You can use systems, you can use data to do it, and figure out where you fall short. But at the same time, now we have incomplete data because the whole dynamics changed.
Right.
And I don't know if they thought about that. Who knows? Find out, because they might spend a lot of money on perishable goods that go bad, and because you don't have a choice but to buy some perishable goods, because for emergency purposes you have to have it. But I'll take it easy until you find out, or at least you'll know that when they do go bad, they don't need to replace them every time. So, I don't know. It's a weird world we live in. Things happen that you never expected. But systems will help, because we can now track that data. I'm wondering, because since 1986 there have been 5 floods that affected Northwood, and some of them weren't as much rain as what we had, by any means, as much rain as we had from that last one. But we found out the dams weren't going to hold anymore, just because the government supposedly didn't know that the dams weren't going to hold, even though they forced the business to reopen them.
The government doesn't want to lose money.
Well, there's a long chain of things that people aren't thinking about. Number one, there was an organization formed by the people of the Three Lakes, and that organization forced the power company that owned those dams to reopen the dams, because the power company had shut one of the dams down because it was in need of repair and they didn't want to spend that much money, so they just opened it up and let water flow, which lowered Wixom Lake so low that it was no longer a lake. It was basically what you see now, maybe a little more water, but not much. And those people got so angry, they formed this thing, and they decided, okay, well, we're going to take this company to court, and they're going to have to raise the water back up because they're affecting our property value, right? So the government says, okay, yeah, you're right. You got to open back up, and you got to fix these things, but we're giving you a deadline to fix them by. Okay, so he opens them back up, doesn't fix them. He keeps getting told by the government, you got to fix them, you got to fix them. In the meantime, so it doesn't happen again, these Three Lake region decided to start this organization. This organization raised enough money to buy those dams from this company. And it was right before the sale was final that flood happened and destroyed the dams. So who's technically responsible for that? The only thing that hadn't happened is the signatures for the sale, right? So who's responsible? You've got the government, you've got an organization that forced the things to be reopened even though they weren't really operational.
Sounds like an ERP failure.
It sounds like an ERP failure. It sounds like a major failure, right? something fell through the cracks, and I'm sitting there like, well, all of you are responsible. So why is it the taxpayers that have to pay to build those dams again to improve your property value? I guarantee you, if my house floods, you guys aren't paying for my house. I don't live next to a river or a lake, but if it flooded, you're not paying for my house. You're not going to increase my property value. I have to take a loan from FEMA, right? So that's where you're at, and to me, it's like, well, they shouldn't be there in the first place. Human beings should have never thought that they could control nature. The only thing that's 100% true about water, it will find its way around anything. You know, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I'm not a huge proponent for rebuilding them strictly because what's good for a few isn't necessarily good for the many.
Have you seen all like the trees and stuff that is in there? Like, I think people are gonna be skeptical of jumping back in that water now because some of them trees are pretty close to the.
Imagine crashing on a jet ski on that lake.
I've done
It's-
that.
that's where I did
Full
it.
of stuff.
Is that what you crashed on Sanford Lake?
Yeah. Yeah, imagine, if I would have shot down into the water and hit one of those.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It's full
My
of
girl- one time my girlfriend
logs
dove
just sticking
and hit her
straight.
head.
Well, it was a river.
Yeah, it's literally.
It is a river. It's just dammed, and then you call it a lake. It's not a lake, it's a reservoir. And reservoirs can be empty.
Yeah, I actually, like a family member.
Now you got green.
Drowned there. He was like, he swam out to like, pick up his son, like went out too far, and he was like wearing jeans, and he dove in to like go save his son, and he like saved
Oh,
his son. But
yeah.
his like jeans got caught on one of the stumps.
Yeah.
And he ended up drowning out there because of that.
Yeah, no, I remember that. You okay over there?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Did you lose some money?
No. I was playing a game, so.
Oh, I lost the game. But the thing is you also don't take into consideration now that there are other laws that are going to come into play, and that's like wetland laws and everything else.
Right.
Because now all that property is back to its original state, which I don't know why they're complaining anyway. Most of them have property rights that went from the road to the water. That's still their property. Plus, there's another advantage. Those dams, if they remove them totally, the fishing industry is going to improve. So, you'll have new species, trout will be back up in there and stuff like that. So, it'll be interesting. Or they'll rush it, they'll rebuild them.
The break again.
It's gonna be the second one, guaranteed.
Yeah. I don't know if it will be. Because the thing is you do run into a lot of environmental concerns now. Other groups are going to get involved. I mean, there are a lot of organizations in that have been responsible for having many dams ripped down. What's scary is there are dams on the Asable River that there were electric dams, but they still have wooden turbines and wooden gears and stuff inside of them, and they're still maintaining them. But the problem is that they're running out of people that know how to do it. So now what's going to happen? So no, it's a challenge, and new things come into play, and the odds are over a period of time, maybe 20 years, maybe not while I'm around, they might get them back, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to live on that if it happens again. Because to do it properly, they're going to have to make them bigger. So.
And especially knowing what's in there, now that the water's gone.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't necessarily choose to walk along anywhere in there. You'd probably get hooks in your feet all over the place. But.
You just sink. It's
Yeah.
like mud.
Oh, is it just mud now?
Yeah, you just. They actually made it illegal to go walk on the farmlands, they called it. So it's illegal because it's a safety hazard and because it's owned by, I believe, the state now.
It's not, though.
That's right when everything happened, I was living on the lake and they had people out there walking around making sure nobody was out there.
Oh, so my conversation hits home with you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, I want that damn lake back.
No, I don't want it
Oh,
back.
you don't?
No, I
Okay.
don't want it back.
Okay.
Nature should just do its thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Man, imagine that. I honestly, and anytime I make a statement like that, I could potentially offend somebody, but at the same time, it's like, well, if you respect my thought, I'll respect yours. I mean,
I respect you.
I understand where things are coming from, I understand where people are like, no, I want that lake back.
Yeah.
Because, but the thing is one person's argument was that it will destroy our economy not having it. And I was like, have you driven through Sanford?
There's nothing
It's so
there.
small.
Where are all the restaurants and that are being supported? They're in Midland.
They're all gone now.
There weren't any there. But my thing is you go through and you get to these little towns and that, what was supporting you? Now, back in the day, yeah. I would agree that back in the day, this would have been a major impact on their economy because, people were buying bait and everything back then and different things. But now, heck, you got coolers. I bought a cooler, and it was not Yeti, it's Arctic brand, but the same thing. By the way, pay the money for Arctic because they actually got sued by Yeti for stealing their patent. So they just tweaked it a little bit now, and they're allowed to sell it. So anyway, I bought this Yeti cooler, and I went camping. And the next day, I had the day. What's that?
I thought it was Arctic.
Arctic.
You bought a Yeti
Yeah, you said you bought a Yeti.
Whatever.
But it's the same thing, because it's
Yeah,
the same
yeah. Hey, I'm old. Give me a couple misworded things, okay? Just a little.
I just don't want
Don't
everybody
point them out,
confused.
man. Don't point them out. It makes me hurt. So anyway, I literally got home, and that weekend I had a heart attack and ended up in the hospital for a couple days. And I came back, and it was still full of ice. I'm like, sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, but my point being is that, now I know for a fact that I can take food forever, however long I want. I don't have to go buy ice at the local store. I can buy beer that is cheaper.
Yeah.
Right. So, technology has changed that. The other thing about those businesses and that, they weren't keeping track of data. They don't know how much that actually did for the economy of the area.
One of the biggest things too is because of COVID, the businesses were already starting to shut down. A lot
Yeah.
of them were already starting to die out, and then the flood hit, it was just like the icing on the cake.
Yeah, it was just,
It really didn't.
it was a
like,
perfect storm to destroy.
Yeah.
Well, short of property values decreasing, I don't think it really did very much, and property values don't necessarily have to decrease. There's value in having property right on a river.
Yep.
Eventually, that soil will
Come back. It'll come
come
back.
back.
It looks like a mini forest right now.
Yeah, that's what I was
Like
like,
it's,
kinda.
Yeah, a bunch of softwood trees
Yep.
growing. Yeah,
yeah, that's how,
yeah. You're not going to have any oaks or anything coming out of that, but yeah, you're going to have a small forest of birch.
Yep. I think the biggest
Big
thing
cottonwood.
is a lot of the population of students at Meridian, their parents lived on the lake, and they were like Midland people, but they lived on the lake because they worked at Dow, had the money, and wanted to like have boats and shit like that.
Yeah.
So they lived on Sanford Lake, and their kids went to Meridian, so they would always pump the school full of money, and that's why they lived there. But now that the lake's gone, they're all pissed off because they don't have the lake anymore. So they're
Well, yeah,
moving away.
and to your point, when I was a kid, those were terrible schools.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Sanford and Beaverton schools went way up in rankings.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Well, the schools will still be nice. They
Oh,
just
yeah.
won't have funding.
Yeah, it's just what I thought.
But they also won't have the population.
Mhm.
So it's a weird thing. You can go on and on about it. And at the end of the day, yeah, systems would have helped prevent all of this. The communication line would have all been in one database. See? There you go. You can draw anything back to data. Anything.
Well, of course.
Want to talk about a Barbie collection? I can bring data back into that. So, but, yeah, at the end of the day, what's that?
So you're collecting Barbies?
No. I said, do you want to talk about it? I was going to talk about your collection.
My collection?
Yes.
What kind of collection?
I'm not saying. I'm not that dumb. No, I would never.
He's got to be into like Bratz or something.
I would never say that anywhere I might be recorded or am recording
That's true.
or in front of witnesses. So, my word against yours. Anyway, it's just data has a way of improving people's lives And, you know, ERP has a way of improving businesses through that technology. And it's almost the same thing, right? Honestly, do you prepare, and, you know, this goes for technology in the workplace, do you prepare for the worst case scenario? And an example of a company that prepared for the worst case scenario and profited greatly by it is Amazon. They literally planned for the worst case scenario because when they first started, the first Christmas, they could not handle the orders. Their system couldn't deal with it. So for the next holiday, they invested, like for the next Christmas, they invested a boatload into infrastructure to a point that they actually leased stuff out, right? They actually leased their space out in that because they can't use it all. And they just keep building because they don't want to be caught again, because that almost cost them their business not being ready. So yeah, they're scalable beyond belief, and they are actually able to capitalize on that by leasing space to any of us and other businesses. You know, do you do that with your organization? You know, and going back to bringing it back to class, as someone likes to point out, you know, the thing with bringing it back to class is the same concept of, okay, SAP, and here's where you might be able to explain why SAP, right? Scalability. Where do I see my company going? Am I growing and growing? And if I am, then SAP is way more scalable than Microsoft Dynamics. Microsoft Dynamics can't handle nearly the amount of data that SAP handles. Their processes aren't set up in that format and everything else. So, you know, the size of the company, your goals, are you hedging your bets for the future, etc. Now, here's the thing. You know, we talked about the number of SAP and ERP implementations that have failed. But you got to remember, when we talk about the failure of ERP systems, all of those are companies that already had systems in place. Okay? If you're starting a business and you start with ERP,
Wouldn't it be pretty easy to keep it going then?
yeah,
Right.
it's a lot different because your data and your business processes are already in a specific format. And that's, you know, the quote-unquote best practice format. So moving even from one ERP system to another, your data should be okay. Because one of the biggest failures is that all of a sudden the data doesn't work.
And who's got the kind of money, unless you're already in a very, very high position, where you can start a company like that, be able to purchase up SAP and then still
But if you started with
be
like Microsoft
successful?
Dynamics, would that still make it pretty easy to transfer?
Any ERP system, yeah, because you're basing it off of a relational database. The naming conventions and stuff are there. It's not made custom for you. It's made by a actual ERP software system. You know, you can start small and you can move on to other ones, and it makes it a little easier. It's not a guaranteed success, but you got a better idea, number one. Number two, you've actually implemented an ERP system already, so you have an idea how that works. Because a lot of these companies, they don't have the faintest clue. They've never been through that process, so it makes it harder to make it through.
Plus with all their employees.
Yeah.
And if they have a legacy system.
Yes, and if they have a legacy system, legacy systems and systems that are already in place that aren't set up properly, you're going to have a nightmare. So, you know, it's interesting. You just got to really think about stuff in all formats, you know. Like, I am a devil's advocate in so many ways. You know, I might have a specific position on something, and at the end of the day, I might say something totally different. And the only reason is because I want people to think, you know, think. You get better results if you're actually thinking about what you're doing. So, I don't know, all depends. What's your goal? And, you know, you don't have to start big, you can always upgrade. The nice thing about SAP, by the way, is that you can just pick certain modules now. You don't have to get the full-blown system to get into it. So you
Does
can,
SAP charge by like the whole company, or is it by like a login like per?
different It's different for every client, yeah, it's
They
your
build it,
choice.
isn't it built to suit you?
It is to a point. The processes aren't, but it's scalable to suit different industries because they have modules. You know, you can choose just to use a human resource module. You can choose just to use sales and distribution module and stuff like that. It never used to be that way. They also now allow you to do, back in the day, you had to house all the technology on your own. Well, now you have the option of actually having that infrastructure on site, or you can do everything through the cloud with
Yep,
them.
And then somebody, you outsource the cloud.
Yeah, you know, so there's a lot of different ways to get into it. So it's not like it used to be, but no matter what, if you already have a system in place, you're hedging your bets on the success of it. And that's based on the fact of we don't think about all contingencies when we implement stuff. You know? Part of it's we just don't follow proper project management procedures. You know? We don't get the right people involved. We don't get enough information. We just do it. And that's scary when you're dealing with millions of dollars. I guess if you're Bezos, it doesn't matter. Right?
What were you coding?
What was that coding? This was for our programming class, and we were just,
Hello world.
yeah, it was hello
Your
world,
name
man.
is David, you get an A,
Um,
if you're not, then you're.
No, what this does is when you run it and you type in David, you get an A. If you enter any other name,
You have to work for it.
no, if you enter anything else right now, it's not working properly,
Yeah,
and
it's
it
not
throws you out of the
working, 'cause
system.
You didn't get an A when you had
Right.
David.
So, it has to do with where this is located and all kinds
Yeah.
of other things. And I think that you get an A right there is coming from, you know what? I may have actually fixed it.
Which one?
Just a while ago?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll just watch this video instead. Do it first.
I may have actually fixed this. Or I might have found where the problem is located. So if I type in David, and then I type in,
It's writing that you get an A down in the TXT file, but it's not showing up.
It does. I just didn't refresh it. So
No,
it's,
no,
you
like
get
what I
it.
was saying is, it's been writing it down, but it doesn't show, like when you enter David in there, it doesn't print out, you got an A.
It will, watch.
Yeah. No,
That's
but
the
I'm
new
talking
one.
about the actual,
In the council.
yeah.
What? Oh, yeah, I don't have it printing to the council.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just have it going to a
You put
text
the
file.
text or-
Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't being descriptive enough.
So it's pulling it in,
Right.
but it's not doing the, you have to work for it. So part of it's fixed. Not all of it. So all I'm doing is, all this was a lesson on how to read and write to a text file.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm writing the value into a text file and then I'm reading them all back in. When we were in class, we were having a problem where it it got into an infinite loop, and that was just a problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
Yeah. So,
You know how to code?
Just C++.
yeah, this is easy to get into. You know. Yeah, just C++.
No, that one's not.
C++ is one of the more difficult ones
It
to do.
is, yeah, I
you know.
hate it, yeah.
If you can do C++, though, you can do Java, you can do C#, you should be able to do Objective-C.
language, yeah.
Well, I'm trying to get all through C++, so.
I tried to start.
Everyone
I'm
can
still a
solve
bit
it.
shaky on it, but I can do it.
Yeah.
I tried to start with C++ and I couldn't do it. I'm doing C# right now and I'm gonna jump over.
I'll tell you that using C#, using Python, stuff like that, I have a badge in my office from a hacker convention, and you can actually program those badges, but you have to understand machine language. Well, machine language is actually kind of off of C, so I was looking at it and I could figure out exactly what to do. Someone else that didn't have any knowledge of C couldn't do it. couldn't even touch
But
it.
they got the badge.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it helps just having any C-based language, it's closer to machine language.
Yeah.
Because we use C++ to actually program,
Database.
well, you can't program a database, that was C#. C++, we actually did use, a friend of mine and myself, we used to program CNC machines for auto companies.
Really?
Yeah, so we could create programs that if you loaded we created a program that you could load a blueprint into, and it would literally run the CNC machine.
Cool.
So, and that was through C.
Yeah, is that what you did before you went
It was
to
part of
teaching ERP or?
Yeah, that was part of it. I did that
Okay.
a while, so, but, yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, programming is interesting. That's the stuff that, yeah. This is the beginning of ERP in some ways, right? Creating a database, creating a program that accesses
No,
database.
you want to read it right.
Yeah. So you just start in the simplest form and you build, and that's the easiest way, because most of the time, like for you, you have a textbook, you have to do exercises, and in the textbook, the exercises say, okay, well, do this step.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that.
Okay, how do
But
I
they
do
never
that?
show you how to do it all together. They don't show you a complete picture very often at all.
Are you talking about the book for if you take C++?
Yeah, for any
Yeah,
textbook.
any book, any
Yeah.
book for any language
For-
like that
yeah.
is the worst.
Any textbook for any language, they're taking you and they're taking you step by step, but they don't tie them together. When I teach it, I start with a single file and then we just continually improve it. And we might improve it by taking code from another program, plugging it in and describing that code, explain that
Oh, that's
code.
really nice.
And manipulate the code to make it work. So I want you to understand the language
Yeah.
and the syntax. And I'm not saying, well, do this little step.
I had a professor that would just read the slides and he'd be like, all right, guys, do you have any questions? And I'm like, okay.
No, I don't have any questions.
Yeah, he's never gonna have any questions.
Am I going to pass? What's funny is years ago, I actually failed out of Pascal, which was a major programming language back in the day. And I didn't get it. I didn't want to. It was like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
C improved that quite a bit. C was a little easier to follow. But once you know enough languages, you get screwed up because you're like, okay, well, I know how to do a case statement in C# or C. Well, Python doesn't do case statements. You have nested ifs, if, or while loops and stuff like that, but you don't get case statements, and that makes it difficult. So, because your logic just balloons out. It doesn't explode, it just balloons out. Your logic becomes this long, drawn-out map.
Do you, do you backward slash and say
yeah.
what you do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and in this language, you're using hashtags.
Hashtags, all right.
Yeah, hashtags will comment. So yeah, I was just showing students that we can read and write to a file. So we started with Hello World, which is the very first program you ever write in any programming language. So we do Hello World, it prints to the screen, and then I'm saying, okay, name, input, enter your name. So I'm asking for input. That's easy. Now I'm saying, okay, name equals David, while the name equals David, so, you type in the name, as long as it equals, or not equals David, then it does this, otherwise, right? So as soon as I typed in David, that program should have stopped. That's why I know I'm getting a better idea where my error is, because if I type in David here,
Still goes.
it shouldn't ask for enter a new name. So where is that coming from, where it says enter a new name?
I don't know, maybe take it out of the else.
No, I look for it down here, because somewhere down here, enter a new name. So it's happening again down here. So what that's telling me is that this code right here is happening twice. So what that tells me is that up here, I might not even need that code. So how do I tell?
Comment it out.
Yeah, you comment it out, so.
It's not even saying you get an A if you enter in David right there.
Right. So I would, Control Z. So I would actually comment every line of code out right now to test that, right? And then I would know exactly what's happening again. And this is your troubleshooting. This is how you solve problems, right? You don't just, so enter your name. If I type,
The biggest thing I'm learning with coding is that, a lot
now
of
I get a
time
different
your
error.
first- A lot of time, your first time trying to type in your code, it won't work. You have to go through and take multiple attempts to try and get it to work.
Right,
It's
exactly.
never the first time.
It's always troubleshooting, always. And my experience too is right here. It says grade somewhere in here. I had a variable for grade and I commented it out right here. So up here somewhere, I have grade, and so I should just right here say,
Grade is equivalent to something.
now test it and see what happens.
It works. But it's still coming back.
Now it finishes it and bombs out. So I've got a problem in that structure, but now I know I don't need that code. So if I know I don't need that code, I can get rid of it. The problem that you run into is when you go out and you do troubleshooting for code and that, or you start searching for code, is you have a lot of people that do C and other languages and program machine language and all this stuff. And they have all this knowledge, so when you ask them for help, they make it as difficult as possible because look what I can do.
And that's not what matters.
They claim
it's
you
just
online,
how
that's
it's
for
run.
sure.
Yeah, so. But yeah, so that's where we're at.
Yeah, how do you not get this? You should understand it. That's why I get a lot.
Yeah, it's like, because I'm a student, you idiot.
Yeah, it's also
Yeah.
like, well, I'm asking you now, how would I know it now?
Yeah. So, but yeah, and part of it is they don't want to do your homework for you.
Yeah, and understandable, you know.
They'll answer more often if you can provide your block of code.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But if you're not providing code and you're just asking a question, how do I
If
do
you're not
this?
changing it too, as
Yeah.
you're
So.
just sitting there with your,
Yeah.
twiddling your thumbs.
But, yeah, so, yeah, programming.
Fun
Reading,
stuff.
writing, file, all good stuff. I started rambling a little while ago, if you want to, you can. I did tie some of the stuff back into class, see?
Great.
Back in the system.
Is this Adobe on here?
Yep, everything,
You got a phone?
I know what I'm doing, I've been doing it for years.